welcome back to my channel. My name is Shelby and today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a different type of video. A couple of years ago I did a couple vlog style videos where I read 5 booktuber recommendations for each video, and I really love doing that style of video, so I'm going to do that, but instead of booktubers I'm going to do Bookstagrammers. Since I mostly interact and post on Bookstagram, I've made a lot of friends there, and so I've selected 5 of my friends and 5 recommendations to read. I will link all of the Bookstagrammers as well as the books that they recommended down below so you can go check them out yourselves. The first person I had to talk about is Cassidy Reads, and Cassidy was actually one of the people I did for the booktube recommendations, and she has been on Bookstagram for like ever, and I've been friends with her for almost 2 years, and she's the one who actually introduced me to one of my very favorite authors, which is Vi Keeland, and her and I both love office romances. She reads predominantly indie books just like I do. Some of her favorite authors are Catherine Cowles, QB Tyler, Vi Keeland, Corinne Michaels. I believe she also really likes Willow Winters. She reads mostly contemporary, but I know she also likes dark romances, and Cassidy is such a sweet person. I think you would really like her page, and also just chatting with her in general. She is a sweetheart. When I asked her for recommendations, she recommended the author Janine Colette, who I had never heard of before, and she'd recommended a couple books by her, but the one she really likes is called Just 10 Seconds. I didn't read too far into the blurb because you guys know I like to go into things blind, but it's about a woman whose husband has died and she needs a fresh start, so she moves to a different town and she joins a bereavement group. And basically the blurb said that she feels dead inside even though her husband is the one who passed away. And I have a feeling this is going to be really emotional. I think I read a couple of reviews when I looked up the book first, and people said it was super emotional. I'm looking forward to picking it up, not only because Cassidy recommended it, but also because it's a new to me author. Then we have Sarah from Kerosene Lit. I first met Sarah when she used to watch my booktube videos over a year ago, and she just hit her 1 year on Bookstagram. She reads almost exclusively contemporaries, but she reads a good combo of indies and traditionally published. She likes a lot of the same tropes that I do. She loves small town romances. Some of her favorite authors are Megan Quinn, Talia Hibbert, Amber Kelly, and Brittany C. Cherry. So we do have a lot of similar authors that we like. She is also such a sweet person to talk to. Her and I become really close since I went back to Bookstagram back in like November, so it was like, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago. She is also a mom. She has a 3-year-old little boy. She lives in Canada, and her aesthetic on her pages is really pretty. The book I'm going to be reading for her recommendation is Real Love by Evie Browning. She didn't directly recommend this one to me, but I saw it in her stories and she made a post about it, and the cover is absolutely adorable. It just came out, so it's a brand new release, and I don't know a ton about it, but I believe that the heroine works in like production of movies, and I think the hero is an actor, but I'm not 100% positive. It looks really cute, and she said it didn't have a lot of reviews or ratings at all on Goodreads, so it's pretty unknown. Then we have my friend Danielle, who is Midwest Mama Reads. I first met Danielle when she followed me from her personal page, and her and I had a lot in common in regard to our reading, and I convinced her to make a Bookstagram page, so her page is relatively new. I think she made it around the new year, and she reads mostly indie books, a lot of Kindle Unlimited just like I do, but lately I have been getting her into Colleen Hoover, and she's really been enjoying her books. Some of her favorite authors are like Brittany C. Cherry. She really likes Candy Steiner, Megan Quinn, Vi Keeland, a lot of similar authors that I also enjoy, and the book she recommended to me was Mr. Masters by T.L. Swan, and I believe that this is a nanny boss romance, maybe an age gap or something like that, and I'm a little bit nervous to read this because a lot of people recommend T.L. Swan, but her books are very hit or miss for people, and they are very long, and I have a hard time with longer books that are like over 400 pages, and I believe all of her books are just as long, but Danielle said that this was really good, and so I'm looking forward to picking it up and kind of seeing what the hype is about with T.L. Swan. Danielle is a really nice person to talk to. She is also a mom, as you can tell by her handle name. She has 2 little boys who are 3 and 5. She lives in the Midwest, and her and I just have a lot in common, and she is so much fun to talk to. And if you like Kindle Unlimited romances or you like indie romances, I think you'd really like her page. Then I have Nina from Pillow Talk Reads. She is a fellow military spouse, and she is stationed out in Nevada. She has a really sunny personality, and she is really outgoing. She's really fun to talk to as well. She reads contemporaries, choice, and she reads a good mix of indies and traditionally published. I think she might read slightly more traditionally published. I know some of her favorite authors are like Colleen Hoover, Jay McLean. She really likes the After series by Anna Todd. Her and I have some things that we like in common, and then some things that not so much. And so I'm really curious to see if I like the same book that she does. The one that I'm reading is Even If It Hurts by Marnie Mann. I saw her post it on her page. I had seen this author and this cover all over Bookstagram a while ago, and the cover is absolutely stunning, and that's what immediately grabbed my attention. I can't 100% remember the premise, but I do know it is a love triangle, and she said she really enjoyed it. I know she had a couple of issues with it, but I think she gave it like 4.5 stars, so I think she still really loved it. And I suggested it to my library and they ended up getting it, so I'm going to read it through there. I'm excited to try this author because of all her beautiful covers, and I do love a love triangle from time to time if it is done really well, so I'm always on the hunt for a good love triangle. The last person I have is the Romance Book Club, and this is Jess, and I met Jess through Sarah. Jess also really loves Brittany C. Cherry, and so Sarah had mentioned her and how they like to buddy read Brittany C. Cherry, and we all ended up doing a buddy read of a Brittany C. Cherry book together. And Jess reads a lot more traditionally published romances than I do. I think she reads far more traditionally published than she does indies. She reads more romance that borders on women's fiction. She loves Jennifer Probst, Tessa Bailey. She also likes Brittany C. Cherry. And Jess is a really sweet person. She loves her pets. She has cats and dogs, and she posts all about them on her Bookstagram. And she is just a really genuine and nice person, and I think she has one of the kindest hearts. The book that I'm reading per her recommendation is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey, and this one doesn't come out until this summer, and she had read an arc of it, but I also got an arc of it off of NetGalley, so I thought this would be the perfect time to read it. And Tessa Bailey has been kind of hit or miss for me. I don't love all of her books, and I know that Jess absolutely loves all of her books. She's one of her favorite authors, but for me, I've liked some and not liked others, so I'm really curious to see if this is one that'll be a hit for me or if it'll be a miss. But I assume that it takes place at some kind of like lake or beach kind of setting because of the cover, and it takes place in the summer, so it's the perfect time to read it. I'm really excited to get to all of these books. I do have like 1 or 2 other books to read before I read these books, so when I do pick up my first read, I will come back and update you guys, but it might be a few days, so I'll see ya. Okay, so it's the next day, and I ended up finishing my current read a little bit early. So I started Even If It Hurts by Marnie Mann, and this is Nina's recommendation. And this is a pretty quick read. I am already over halfway done, and I had just started it later this morning, and it is late afternoon. And our main character's name in this is Chloe, and it's through her point of view. It doesn't have either of the heroes' POVs. And during her junior year of college, she ends up going to London to study abroad, and that's where she meets the first hero named Oliver. She isn't very experienced in regard to men, and so he has a lot of firsts for her, and they have a very pure and sweet love story. They kind of fall hard and fast for each other, and they date for the 4 months that she is there, but then come June she goes back to the US to Boston where she has her school and she starts an internship. So they break up before she goes back to the US, and that is kind of the end of their romance. And we kind of pick up a couple years later. She is working for the same company that she did the internship for. She works in marketing, and she meets a guy named Lance who works with her best friend's boyfriend. He is a lawyer, and I believe he like owns the firm that he works at, so he is very successful, very wealthy, and she falls very hard for him as well. They have this very passionate romance, and halfway into the book, that's kind of where we're at, is she's about to move in with Lance and take things to the next level with him. And I'm kind of wondering when the other shoe will drop and when Oliver will come back into her life. But so far I'm really enjoying it. I do like the steamy scenes here and there that are peppered into the story. The only thing I think is a little bit unrealistic is both of them were just so enamored with Chloe from the get-go, and we didn't see a lot of conflict with either hero. So I'm very curious what the catch is. So when I end up finishing it, I will come back and update you later. Okay, so it's the next day, and last night I finished Even If It Hurts by Marnie Mann. This was a really quick read, and I just couldn't put this one down. I have such a love-hate relationship with this book. I think I ended up messaging Nina after I finished this because I just had to get my thoughts out to someone, and her and I had quite a long discussion about it. Her and I had a lot of the same issues with this book, but she ended up rating it quite a bit higher than me. I really liked the love triangle aspect, and I really liked the love story with Oliver and Chloe, their first love. I also liked the love story with Lance and Chloe. Some of my issues were that both Lance and Oliver were too perfect, Neither of them were flawed, and they were just like perfect boyfriends and husbands to Chloe. And we never really learn what is so special about Chloe. Like, why did these men just fall at her feet and become her true loves? We just don't know too much about Chloe other than her falling in love with these two guys, and she has a career, and that's kind of about it. I wanted more conflict, and a lot of things at the end weren't resolved for me. And I don't know if I liked the message that was sent at the end about the person that she didn't choose. I don't know, I just had some issues with it in regard to the lack of angst and stuff as well. Like I said, I couldn't put it down. It was a very compulsive read. It was a very quick read. So there was a lot I liked and disliked about it. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars because I did enjoy it. I just had issues with the story and some of the plot choices. But overall, if you like love triangles, I think you would enjoy this one. It may not be your new favorite love triangle, but I think it would be enjoyable. So like I said, I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. And then right before bed, I picked up Real Love by Evie Browning, and already I am over halfway into it. I think I am near the 60% mark, and this one was recommended by Sarah. And I didn't really know what I was going into when I picked this up other than both of the characters in the story. They work in film production. And if you like Hollywood stuff and you really like behind the scenes of how movies are made, production lingo, production stuff, I think this one would totally be for you. I have a few issues with it so far. Our two main characters in this story are John and Anna. John has this screenplay he has written, and he's been trying to get someone to pick it up and produce it, but he doesn't want to give up creative control, and so that's why no one has picked it up, because they want to change things about it. So in the meantime, he's like a bartender. He works with catering stuff. He also has acted a little bit here and there. Our heroine is Anna. She was married to a really big Hollywood agent. She's also produced movies and TV shows. But the last big thing she did was over 10 years ago. She is now 35 and divorced. She is almost 10 years older than our hero. And they end up meeting in a bar. The hero is the bartender. He learns that she works in Hollywood, and they get up to talking, and they have this romantic spark. And then they meet again, I believe like a day or two later, at some Hollywood party. He's working as like the catering bartender, and she is there because she's a producer. And he learns that she was married to a really famous Hollywood agent. And I think he gets the wrong impression that maybe because she didn't disclose that she's like one of them and fake. It wasn't really discussed why his opinion of her changed so quickly, but I'm assuming like that's why. And basically the plot of this book is they end up having to work together on a film. It's like this really cheesy vampire movie, and she is the director and he is the assistant director. So they are working together, and that's kind of where we're at right now. They have some chemistry while they're working together, and nothing major has happened with them yet. And like I said, I'm almost at the 60% mark, so I'm waiting for things to kind of pick up with them. This is told in third POV, which can be hit or miss for me. Each chapter doesn't start with the character's name, so I'm never knowing like who we're focusing on. And the author jumps around mid-chapter between different characters, so I get a little bit confused at times who we're focusing on and like what character we're supposed to be seeing through. Like I said, it's a lot about the production of movies and all of the Hollywood lingo and Hollywood drama. Not really my thing, but I'm hoping that the romance wins me over at the end. So when I end up finishing this one, I will come back and update you later. Okay, it is the end of the day. I just got my kids down, and if I look like a hot mess, it is because I feel like a hot mess. It's been quite the day, but I did end up finishing Real Love by Evie Browning this afternoon during Grayson's second nap. And I think I knew from the get-go that this wouldn't be quite the romance for me, just because it does focus on movie production. Not something I have a huge interest in, but I did think it was a cute romance. A lot of the plot did focus on a lot of drama with the ex-husband and the production of the movie that they were doing together. It was a very quirky romance, and the steamy scenes kind of didn't match well with that. It seemed a little too hot and heavy for the content of the romance. So those two things didn't really meld well together. So overall, I thought this was a cute romance. It just wasn't really the romance for me. And I can see why people would really enjoy this. I looked at the Goodreads ratings. There aren't a lot, but I looked at the reviews, and the people who did enjoy it, they like that element of it. And that's not something that really appeals to me. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. Then I decided to pick up Mr. Masters by T.L. Swan, and this is Danielle's pick. I was pretty nervous to pick this one up for a couple of reasons. One, her books are extremely long. This one is nearly 500 pages. And two, her books kind of get hit or miss reviews. People either love or hate her books. There's kind of no in between, which is interesting that it's so polarizing. I have read one short story from this author before in a Christmas anthology, and it wasn't really for me. I think it might have been one of my least favorite stories in that anthology, but I know that that probably wasn't indicative of all her full-length novels, so I wanted to give another one of her books a try, and I figured this was the perfect time. This is a Nanny Employer Romance with an age gap. It is about a woman named Brielle. She's from Australia. She's in her 20s. And her best friend decide to get a work visa to go to London for 1 year and work there. And the work that she ends up getting is a nanny position for a single father. His name is Julian Masters, and he is a really well-respected judge in London. His wife died 5 years ago, and he has 2 children. He has a son who's 8 and a daughter who is a teenager. And Brielle gets put into this position in their house. I think he's gone through a lot of nannies. A lot of nannies don't stay, and he's obviously really attracted to her, and she's attracted to him even though he's quite a bit older than her. He is nearly 40. And so far I'm over 20% in, and it's read pretty quickly considering it's nearly 500 pages. I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm hoping that this momentum stays, and I can already tell this is going to be pretty steamy and forbidden and kind of a naughtier romance, because even so far the language that is used, you can tell it's a little dirtier, and I kind of like that about it. So I'm really excited to kind of see where this story is going, and I will definitely update you guys tomorrow when I make more headway, and fingers crossed I still really like it. Okay, it's the following evening, and earlier today I finished Mr. Masters by T.L. Swan. And considering this was almost 500 pages, it actually read pretty quickly, and I was able to finish it in a day, which is really good. I was engaged for the majority of the story, so it was really easy to read. It did go in the direction that I kind of predicted it would based on the 20% mark. Obviously, Brielle and Julian start a forbidden romance while she is working for him. He is a very damaged hero. He doesn't want to settle down. He is fine sleeping with her as long as she doesn't get attached to him. He never wants to get married again. He doesn't want to have a relationship. He's really wounded from the woman in his life who died, and he struggles being a good father to his kids. He just wants to provide for them, but he kind of lacks on the fatherly portion, and that is where Brielle steps in. She is such a breath of fresh air. She really won this story over for me. She is lighthearted and goofy, and she has a lot of fun with the kids, and she stands up for herself. She doesn't let Julian walk all over her, and when he oversteps his bounds, she is not afraid to put him back in his place. She also stands up for his kids, and I really loved her so much. She is one of my favorite heroines that I've read in a long time. If you have a hard time reading about toxic relationships, I don't think this would be the story for you, because Brielle and Julian's romance was pretty toxic for the most part. They had this cyclical romance where they would sleep together, they would argue, they would come back together, and then they would sleep together again. It's kind of that whole scenario. And I would get mad because Julian kind of treated Brielle like crap at times, and she would easily forgive him because she can't live without him. So yes, she stood up for herself. I also felt like she forgave him really easily because she loved him. There were a couple twists about Julian's past, but it wasn't anything major that was shocking to me. And overall, I really enjoyed this romance. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and it does make me want to read more by T.L. Swan. This was definitely way better than the short story that I read by her. And then I ended up picking up Cassidy's pick, which is Just 10 Seconds by Janine Colette. And I'm only about 15 or 20% in, so I only just started it. It's about a woman who a few years ago, she was married, she had the picture perfect life, she lived in Manhattan, her husband had a lot of money, and all of a sudden her husband left her life, and it was all due to a gunshot. During her grieving process, she moves to a small town in New York State. Away from the city, she ends up moving to a small town because her best friend and her best friend's husband, they own a diner there. She wants to be close to her best friend, and she becomes a waitress at the diner. Her life is very different from the life she led in Manhattan. And one day, this man with his little daughter, they walk into the diner, and the daughter is injured. She fell off her bicycle. He's really scared of hospitals, so the heroine ends up driving them to an urgent care, and that's how they meet. And she ends up meeting him again when she stumbles into a bereavement counseling group, and he is also there because the mother of his child, I think his wife, she died, and that's why he is in that group. And so they bond over that, and he seems like a really good person, but obviously really traumatized, and that would explain maybe why he doesn't like hospitals. I'm not really sure. We haven't gotten there yet. I know there is a twist. Based on reading it, I can just assume there's this twist, and I feel like I know what's going to happen based on the little clues that are peppered in there. I'll be curious if I'm wrong. I just think I'm right on this. I think back in the day, like before I started reading a lot of romance, this would have shocked me. But most of the time now I'm able to like pick up on the little hints that are dropped, which I wish I didn't. That's a whole separate rant. I wish I didn't pick up on the hints because I think I would be more impressed by more romances. But that is a whole story for a whole nother day. I plan on reading a good portion of it tonight and then finishing it off tomorrow. So when I do, I will come back and update you later. Okay, so the next day I ended up finishing Just 10 Seconds by Janine Colette, and I absolutely loved this book. I said in my last clip that I thought I knew kind of where the direction of the story was going, and I guessed one of the twists, and that is true. I did guess the twist. To me, it was kind of obvious, so I'm not sure if it was supposed to be a surprise or not, but there were some other twists that were peppered in with that one that were really surprising to me, so I still had a good surprise element to it. I really liked the romance between Dean and Mara. It was a quieter romance, but definitely a lot of emotion there. This deals a lot with grief and self-blame and forgiveness, and I thought this was just overall a pretty mature romance, and I really enjoyed it. So I ended up giving it 5 stars, and I was really happy to message Cassidy and tell her how much I loved it. And then I picked up my last read for this video, which is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. This is Jess's recommendation, and I am halfway through this book, and this is about a girl named Piper. She is in her late 20s. She is an LA socialite. Her stepfather is pretty famous. They have a lot of money. Her mother married him when she was like 4 or 5 years old. She moved to LA. She used to live in this small beach town in Washington. Her mom was married to someone there. Her dad was a crab fisherman and ended up dying at sea, so she moved to LA, and that's where she met the stepfather. Anyway, Piper gets in a ton of trouble in LA. She ends up going to jail for the night, and her stepfather ends up cutting her off. He says, "You are pretty spoiled and I'm not going to give you any more money." So he sends her to Washington, to that small town that she was from, and she sends her there with her sister for 3 months to kind of like learn her lesson. And it turns out that she inherited some bar along with a little apartment on top. So her and her sister end up renovating this bar, and she meets a guy there named Brendan. He is a local. He's lived in Westport his whole life. He doesn't plan on leaving, and it just so happens he is also a fisherman like Piper's father was. And his wife died like 7 years or 8 years before. He hasn't been interested in any woman since his wife has died until Piper shows up. They couldn't be more different. He is very gruff, doesn't care about social media, and doesn't care what other people think. He's not afraid to get down and dirty, whereas she's the complete opposite. And so far I'm enjoying it, but I do have to say that Piper's personality type isn't my favorite in a romance. I'm not huge on socialite and spoiled type of heroines, but I do know that she has a very sweet personality, and I think she's going to make a transformation by the end. This is told in third person POV, which sometimes is hard for me to connect to. I'm having a hard time really seeing into Brendan's mind. Like I said previously, Tessa Bailey is kind of a hit or miss author for me. I like her books, but I don't love them, and I'm not really sure where this book will lie. So I will finish this one up, and then I will wrap up this video tomorrow when I finish this one. And yeah, I'll update you guys then. Okay, it's the next day, and last night I finished It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. And my friend Sarah over at Kerosene Lit on Instagram, she had told me that the heroine in this story, as well as some of the plot, is based on the television show called Schitt's Creek. And I've tried watching this show before, and it just wasn't really for me. So maybe if I had enjoyed that show, I would also have enjoyed this book more. I think I had mentioned that I didn't really like the heroine that much. While she was sweet, I feel like she made her transformation a little too quickly from a very spoiled heiress to being cool living in this seaside town with not a lot of material things. I think her change happened over a month, and I just don't see that as being really realistic. I also think the enemies to lovers trope could have been played up more. When she first gets there, she meets Brendan, and Piper and Brendan have this enemies to lover thing going on, and they get over it really quickly. So I think that could have been played up a lot more than it actually was. And there were some things going on with the steamy scenes that didn't really work for me too. So while this was a cute story, and I like the direction that it took and the overall plot of it, I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I didn't dislike the book. I did enjoy it. I've just liked some of Tessa Bailey's better, but I've also liked some of Tessa Bailey's books less. So it wasn't a total fail by any means, and if you like Tessa Bailey's books and you're looking for a good summer read, I think you would really enjoy this one. So I finished all the books for this video. I was really happy to pick up some of my friends' recommendations. I'm going to go through really quick what I read. I first read Even If It Hurts by Marnie Mann, and I gave this 3.5 stars. Then I read Real Love by Evie Browning, which I gave 3 stars. Then I read Mr. Masters by T.L. Swan, which I gave 4 stars. Then I read Just 10 Seconds by Janine Colette, which I gave 5 stars. And then last but not least, I read It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey, and I gave this 3 stars. Let me know if you enjoyed this style of video and if you'd like me to do it again. As always, I will link all the Bookstagrammers as well as the books that I talked about down below, and I will see you guys on my next one. Bye.